Going live now.
Okay. Oh, I think let me go live from your account too. Let me share the links. Do you see it in your account, Pontus?
Believe so. Let me
Okay.
double check here. Yeah, we're live.
Okay, cool. We are live, and let me just send this link out with Pontus and. Mhm. All right, we just let um, people come in. We have a few people in the room right now. And all right, everyone, thank you for tuning in. We'll just give everyone like a couple more minutes so that everyone gets to be in the conversation. And if you're here, drop a hello. We'd love to see who's here. It's also my first time co-hosting with Pontus from Corbett, so we'll give an introduction of ourselves in a couple of minutes, but we'll just let people come in. Wafsito is here. Hi there. Hi. Thanks for being our loyal stream viewer. Oh, Arthur's here too. Hello, hello, GM. Um, all right, once we hit a couple more people, we'll start the live stream and people start coming in. Um, are you excited for the stream, Pontus? Just like riff a little bit about x402.
So excited. We've been all gas no breaks since we found out about the x402 hackathon. So excited to kind of hear what your thoughts are on it, and yeah, maybe get some comments from some folks that are building. We've already had folks reach out to us for help and support with Fairmeter and Corbett. So the juices are flowing, that's for sure, which is great.
Ooh, Zach is here. Zach has been a very big supporter of the market maps that I did on X402. He also writes up a lot of like threads on like DeFi and AI stuff. So thanks for tuning in. All right, I think we're ready to start. So hello everyone, and once again, thank you for being here. We appreciate your time with us this Wednesday morning, I want to say. It's a little bit later for me here because I'm based in Singapore. But I think for Pontus as well, it's also in the morning. So I'm Joyce, and I do product at Crossman. So Crossman is a platform that helps developers bring their apps and also their agents on chain with our Web2 um, like APIs, and we're also a stablecoin orchestration platform. So if you're building anything fintech or anything financial apps that requires wallets or on-ramps, come speak to us. You can DM me or you can DM the Crossman account. Pontus, would you like to give an introduction of yourself?
Sure. Yep. Hey, my name is Pontus. I am a wrangler here at Corbett's. We've been building with x402 and agentic commerce platforms for the last 6 months. We've been, I think, collectively, our team's probably been in crypto for at least a decade at this point. Been shipping software for much longer than that. And have had the extreme pleasure to work with the Crossmint team from the very early days when it was just Alfonso and a couple of other folks. And it's been really fun reconnecting with y'all along the lines of agents and X402.
Yeah, and we're also very excited to have you on because I think you've been doing, a lot of work kind of making Solana especially, right, compatible with X402. Now, this X402 hackathon is organized and sponsored by the Ethereum Foundation, but anything payments should be accessible across all chains, and you guys are doing great work there. So, just jumping in, right? It's been about what 3, 4, 5 months since I think Coinbase first hosted their x402 hackathon in New York. I don't know if you're there, but it was kind of when, a lot of like crypto Twitter was introduced to x402 on the builder side. And we had like this whole x402 frenzy, which is when Corbett was kind of thrown into the spotlight as well. I think a lot of participants in this hackathon would, especially ones who are kind of new, right, to this whole movement, are curious as to what can actually be built with X402. So a lot of the hype that we see has been very like agent focused, right? So they're like, oh, it's like unlocking revenue stream for like API providers, and now agents can pay for you and do micropayments. But when we strip all of that down, based on what you have seen and what Firemeter is building for, what is like the one most interesting use case that you're seeing people build with X402?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it's a great question. And I think there are a lot of different ways to attack it. Maybe it might make sense just to like go back to basics in many ways. I think like one of the things I have spent a lot of time thinking about, and just like our team, just in general, is what X402 is. And I think a lot of people kind of have jumped into the space over the last like 1 to 2 months, just excited to start building. And that's like a really great testament, I think, just to like the developer culture that's been kind of permeating in crypto over the last couple of years, frankly. But fundamentally, like the question I think a lot of people should be asking themselves is like, what is X402? And we put out an article about this last Friday to kind of try and provide a little bit of clarity on what that like the answer to that question is. And hopefully, like I'll get back to your question about what we should build. But I think it's important to like just specify, like go back to basics and say that like X402 in and of itself is just a payment specification for how agents should pay for things on the internet, right? And like what that means fundamentally, and what I tell my friends when they ask me what is it that you do, it's the answer is we enable agents to take action, to do things, right? And so when we think about kind of what the agents we have working for us today, whether it's like ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, those are very like reactive agents, right? Like when you ask a question about like, hey, what's the weather in New York, or what's the weather in Singapore? Hey, what should I pack to wear for a week-long conference trip in Abu Dhabi for the Solana conference? And it goes out and it finds that information and kind of comes back to you. But fundamentally, like that's probably not like the agent experience that we've been promised, right? We've been promised this experience of an agent actually maybe not packing our bags, but at least like booking the flights for us and like making sure that we can get to the airport and get to the conference. So we have our tickets, etc. And so when I say like agents taking action, that's what I mean. And X402 as a payment specification enables an agent to pay for things. And there's one thing we've learned in the course of human history, it's that in order to have action occur, you need money behind it. Right? People aren't going to typically do things for free. And so I say all this in that X402, I think, represents a much bigger stage in how are agents taking action. And so if we reframe your question, then like, what is it that people can and should be thinking about building with X402? I would say that maybe a more interesting question is, what are actions that we think agents should be taking on our behalf? And then for the hackathon, I think we can even extend it and ask like another question, which is, what design or what thought framing does X402 present for agent builders that hasn't been possible before? whether that's with startups in general or with agents as a whole. So maybe I didn't answer your question, but maybe I hopefully brought us to a little bit more of an interesting place to get to an answer. I hope.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, but I think for our audience, before we dive into all that, was this the post that you were talking about? The one that I'm sharing right now? Just so they can
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of follow along and follow
yeah.
you guys. Okay, amazing. Um, so, all right, for everyone who's listening and tuning in the live stream, I highly recommend that you go through this article while you're listening to us, and also read it again once this live stream has ended, because this one basically, like this article, right? Basically, especially if you're a participant, tells you a lot about why X42 is important, why Corbett is building the first framework, and also why they're building a facilitator. And I think another question that a lot of people ask is, why do agents have to be on chain? And obviously, this question was also driven by the whole like X42 like explosion, which to the developer community was actually quite amusing, because they're like, well, it's just an error code. Why is this so interesting? But to dive into what you said, right? What could be possible now with X42 that hasn't been possible before? And so now I'm going to share it on the screen, which is the X42 ecosystem, right? And I think this is interesting to a lot of not just the hackathon participants, but also everyone else who's kind of tracking what's happening in the X42 ecosystem. And I'm not gonna lie, when I go through this list, right, it's still a lot of like infrastructure, as is, I don't really want to say the problem, but like this seems to be very unique to like crypto, where everyone's trying to build like the rails, and then not much of like apps are being built, right? Obviously, on the broader crypto side, we see things changing, like people are building more like consumer apps and like games and whatever. But especially in X402, I think the reason why a lot of my non-technical friends didn't really understand it was because all they saw were like a lot of these dev tooling and like infrastructure. And obviously you guys were being the facilitators, and they're like, okay, well, this is all great, but it doesn't relate to me, right? And I think for the hackathon specifically, you want to have something that people can kind of see and relate to. Um, and unless you're like kind of technical and you went to like X402 scan, you wouldn't really see what's going on in like X402, right? And that was a lot of the criticism that I heard from my friends, especially like traders, like who would actually really try and understand what this was instead of just buying tokens. Um, what do you think of this whole like everyone's trying to build like the infrastructure and the rails, and no one really knows what's going on the consumer side? And I'm seeing a comment come in where they're saying it's usually devs building for devs and GitHub links. And that is very true, even in the last AI cycle, where people were like, kind of going all crazy on like AI16Z, when it's just, it's a GitHub. And like most people would never understand what AI16Z is. And we probably don't want to have, make the same mistake, right? For this whole like X42 movement. But let's say a team wanted to use Corbits, right? Or Fairmeter, and they're like, we want to build something that's like consumer facing. What's something that comes to mind that would be interesting to use you guys for?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And certainly, I think Heathen had a very astute point about kind of the state of the union when it comes to builders in general. For frankly, like any new problem space in crypto, there's a lot of, I think there are appropriate terms, probably the vaporware, and especially um, with the dawn of vibe coding and it's gotten even more egregious. Um, as like an aside, right? Like we've kicked off this X402 hackathon. Both Crossman and Corbett are co-contributors to it, and it's been live for all of 2 days, and within the first 24 hours, we saw code submissions for a month-long hackathon. And it's like,
Yeah.
there's no way that anyone could have started coding and shipped a feature within 24 hours for this space. And you take a look into it, and it's just like a bunch of vibe coded slop, which is like not great.
Mhm.
And I mean, we've seen that time and time again. I think like if we get into the weeds, maybe of like what it is that we think people can build, the things that we're seeing right now, people are spending the majority of their time and energy on with X402 is around inference.
Mm.
So I am working on um, another thread as a part of an announcement we're making um, here in a few days, and it's like a state of the union of like what inference has become. I think like everyone over the last year or two, especially within like this space, has picked up some kind of subscription to OpenAI or Claude or whatever their like agent platform of choice is,
Yeah.
or model is, right, is more accurate.
Yeah.
And um, X402 seems to be kind of blowing the need for a subscription away pretty well, because now you can just pay for the inference that you want. And we know inference has this problem or this great feature in that it's like the cost per request is exceptionally small. But what that means is like fundamentally, you're not going to use one model to solve all your problems, right?
Yeah.
You're going to want a model that is optimized for the tasks you set out to use. And so this idea of like juggling 4, 5, or even say 10 different subscriptions for a variety of different models feels very ludicrous and very like akin to what we kind of see in the like video streaming space, right? My girlfriend the other day like made the comment that it seems like we killed cable and just replaced it with a bunch of subscriptions with like Netflix and HBO, and we're just paying the exact same price anyway, which is kind of a funny thing to think about with when it comes to like inference and models. And
Yeah.
so when I think about like what is it that developers are going to be able to build and should be thinking about building, it's how can I use models or how can I use tools that generally have been like fairly inaccessible because of the cost to acquire a subscription with them or like the barrier to entry, um, but are capable of solving really specific pain points for the people that take advantage of those subscriptions, and in many ways like democratizing that access. The one thing I think about a lot, and this is like this is an idea that kind of lives rent free in my head, is like the weather apps that we have on our phones by default. Like if you open up the weather app, is like really great at telling me what the weather is, but is really bad at telling me like the context about what I should be wearing or what I should bring with me based off of like what it is that I'm doing with my day. And like I'm a runner, and like it's 34 degrees in New York right now,
Yeah.
almost like 1 degree centigrade, right? And
Yeah.
I might know what it is that I should be wearing, but others might not, right? And is it worth paying 5 cents or a penny to figure out like what it is that I should wear so that I'm more comfortable in my run? Or is it like extensively like what are other options for me based off of, I don't know how much snow there's been in in the area, like on the mountains around me, right? So I think that the like consumer apps that are like hyper focused on solving like a problem really well with specific models or specific tools, um, probably is like the right place to start. because the cost to start is so low because of X402.
Yeah. I'm seeing there's a comment here saying that so Zach saying I'm vibe coding my first on-chain app for this hackathon and I started yesterday. And
Mhm.
um, you know, I think the broader developer community, while we are quite happy about, like making building apps like very accessible, we also call it like slop, right? But I think there was actually a magical moment that I observed during my time in Tokyo where I was like I just watched my housemate transform from like non-technical into becoming like the half technical co-founder, building in like crypto and AI, right? It within the span of a week because the models these days have just become so good and
Yep.
so cheap. And so it's just crazy to me because I'm seeing this unlock for so many people. And um, obviously, when I look through like the X402 list, right, I see a lot of like vibe coded stuff that's probably not as secure, but like it works and it gets people into the technology and people understand. And I think that is probably also the aim for this hackathon to get more people to learn about X402 and also like the various partners that are sponsoring and mentoring like you and me.
Yep.
And it's great that, for example, purchase also cooking something for consumers for this hackathon. So pretty happy, pretty excited to see what you guys cook up. But to get back into the topic of kind of just building and like the cost of inference going down, and what you can actually build with X402 and agents. So a thought that I've always had was,
Can I say something about vibe coding? Just like right
oh
quick.
yeah, yeah,
I I don't want to get it misconstrued that vibe coding is bad. I think it's been exceptionally like powerful and will continue to be. Like I've been an entrepreneur for almost a decade at this point, like both running and being a parts of startups and also like shipping hobbies and doing a bunch of fun things on the side. Um, and the like most magical piece about um, like vibe coding and vibe design or whatever like vibe insert X here that I think is important to recognize is that it dramatically accelerates your time to market and your
yeah,
ability to put things in front of people. I think where we stand when we are building Fairmeter and like where we see the X402 infra landscape, which is what you alluded to earlier, is that there comes a time and a place where there are certain things that just straight up shouldn't be vibe coded, or shouldn't have the majority of their code be vibe coded, right? Because when you think about like frameworks like Fairmeter, or you think about um, packages that developers use all the time, like whether it's React or like whatever it might be, those things have real consequences when something is like poorly designed or poorly architected. And the reason why we built Fairmeter is because we realized that like the Coinbase package that they shipped is at its core a reference implementation. It's not designed to be used for production. It is designed to, much like this hackathon, get something out the door that shows what is possible with X402 as a specification. And one of the things that we've been priding ourselves in recently and talking with developers, both in and outside of the various like X402 hackathons, is that Fairmeter as a framework for agentic commerce is very easy for LLMs to understand. And
mhm,
so when you're starting to build, whether it's for X402 or whether it's for A2A or whether it's for ACP or like any of these agentic protocols that exist, because whether we like to admit it or not, it's more than just X402. Fairmeter is well understood by your vibe coding platform, and enables you to build faster. right? And if we can build a framework that is performant and ready for production, which ours is, but also able to be like easily understood by both like seasoned developers and LLMs alike, then like that's a winning formula. So vibe coding isn't a bad thing. I definitely think it's like a net positive. But it's important, I think, to be critical about when and where it's used, especially when we think about like the architecture and the design that's like exceptionally relevant and top of mind for infrastructure or like low level projects.
Yeah. And I think, you obviously put in a lot of thought and a lot of work into like making Farmida understandable for LLMs, as have we at Crossmint. And I think vibe coding is also, you know, a lot easier, I want to say, for people who already come from somewhat of a technical background, like design, for example, right? It's kind of technical adjacent because they work with engineers, they understand how apps are built. And I do agree that the worst part of vibe coding is the term vibe, right? Because it kind of lowers like the perception of what people think of it. And people think of like vibe, they're like, oh, it's just like things that Gen Zs play around with. It's things that people who are not serious play around with. But again, if you're wanting to start, vibe coding like an X402 app, like Fairmeter plugs in really, really nicely into your cursor or your clock code. And Opus 4.5 is actually really good now. I'm like, yo, I'm blown away. If I were a junior developer in like today, I would not have a job, literally. Um, and also with Crossman, which I'll talk about in just a few minutes, we're also LM friendly. But going back to the topic of, what can, what are some of the things that I kind of want people to build with X402 selfishly? Um, I've always been fascinated and by this idea. And this is an idea, this is something that I've seen a lot of people pitch in SF specifically because it's kind of like a wet dream for a lot of like AI bros, right? Where they're like, what if we could run an entire company with just agents? And the problem has always been that, when you run a company, you need a way to transfer information to each other, not just in the company, but also to, people or non-people, right? Agents outside of the company. And you also need a way to like transfer payments. And for the longest time, I think the payments part just wasn't unlocked because agents, well, couldn't have their own bank accounts, and they couldn't have their own credit cards. I know Visa and Stripe has kind of solved that part, but there's still a lot of like security concerns, and it's like, oh, like, do I really want to give my agents a card, right? Like, you think about it, and also, what name can I even put under the agent? I still need kind of like a human to like KYC
Yeah.
and like his account and everything.
It might be solved, but the regulatory piece is not caught up. And
It's not cut up.
if you're giving an agent a credit card or a bank account, you are probably committing a crime somewhere in the world, right?
Yeah. But when we started talking, like by we, I mean Crossman, right? Because we built wallets and we started talking to like a lot of agent platforms, a lot of agent developers. We realized that it's just a lot easier for agents to have wallets because first of all, I don't want to get into like the legality and like the weeds and stuff, but it's so much easier to have a wallet and have spend permissions than trying to get a bank account or a card and trying to get like a one-time um, code every time they want to make a permission, they want to make a transaction. And then we saw X402 where now they can have like microtransactions at like the speed of light. And so I think this wet dream is gonna come true pretty soon, where we're probably gonna get our first like completely agent run company by like I want to say in the next 12 months. I'm going to be conservative and say next 12 months, but over here internally at Crossman, we've already built kind of a prototype of this with Crossman wallets, and it's insane. It's like these agents know where to find their own information, they know who to pay, they know how much to pay, and this whole cycle just happens like every few minutes. And because thanks to L2s and also thanks to Solana, it's really cheap now to make transactions, and so they can actually go out there and do stuff. So this is one use case that I really want to see come true. And if anyone in the hackathon can actually build somewhat of a prototype of this, I think it would be really, really, really cool. What do you think, Pontus?
I think you're onto something. And yeah, this is where. So I think what you're describing is probably. Yeah, I think your timeline is probably right. It's probably like a year, like 9 to 12 months out. Agents running their own companies, at least is like close to anything that we've presumably seen or like are familiar with in the like small business space right now.
Yeah.
I think that there's a pretty like natural first step to that though that we're much closer to realizing. And when I say much closer, I mean like we're already kind of seeing it. X402 jobs is like a really good example of this, in which okay, let me take a step back. I think that the first step of the first iteration of this is agents running or orchestrating valuable resources for
Mhm.
people to consume, right? Like fundamentally, what is a business? A business is some entity that you are interacting with to give you a good or a service that provides value to you, right? If you
Yeah.
walk into a sandwich shop, you pay the sandwich shop to give you a sandwich, and hopefully that makes you happy, right? If you are interested in weather data, you go to a weather company, you pay them for the access to that data, and they give you the data back. So fundamentally, like the first step of this is an agent owning a resource that it can like sell and get paid for to provide.
Yeah.
Really great example of this that we've seen in X402 over the last like couple of days, literally over the weekend, is X402 jobs, and by the team over at Memputer. And it is a representation, or like it is drag and drop, get like build agent workflows that create resources that can get paid. Um,
Mhm.
so I think we're really close. Also, like a little bit of alpha, we're building a similar kind of tool, not necessarily the same as like X402 jobs specifically, but a way to cleverly chain together resources and serve them, which will enable agents to quote unquote run their own businesses. And that should be definitely be out like over the next, like before the end of the year, probably in like the next week or so. Um,
Okay. So
so
this is
yeah,
something that the participants can actually use in the hackathon then.
yeah, we can't get it out before like the end, like in a reasonable time frame before the end of the hackathon, again, I think it's probably going to be like an out in like a week or so. I would say if you're building for the hackathon and you're interested in this, shoot me a DM on Twitter, Classic Scuba, or send us a message at Corbet's on our Twitter account, and we can kind of get you into like an early beta users group, I guess. But what you really should be focusing on is for this hackathon is probably building a resource that is valuable, right? And if that means chaining together different X402 resources or different agent models to create that resource, you're putting yourself in a really strong position for when that tool comes out or when other things come out.
Yep. All right. So I think there's a lot of alpha dropped in the stream. But before we kind of wrap this up and take in any last questions, I also wanted to give a shout out to Crossman, obviously, because we're also supporting this hackathon, and we work very, very closely with Corbett. So if you want to use the Farameter facilitator, or you just want to use anything that Corbett has built, and you're looking for a wallet provider, so you're looking to give your agents wallets, or even people who just want to log into your website and have agents interact with each other, check out Crossman Wallets. We have very, very comprehensive wallet documentation here. And if you want to see kind of like an agent's use case, because for this hackathon, this is the most relevant, just come into here and watch how agents are actually able to buy anything on Amazon and also Shopify using Crossman Wallets. But first and foremost, get yourself familiarized with a lot of the quick starts that we have. I think a lot of people get started on like the React quick start right away, and also the many wallet actions that we have. And we also have like we have the REST API, and we also have the SDK. So if you're ever interested, or if you run into bugs or problems, feel free to just DM me on Twitter or DM the Crossman handle. Or if you are a hackathon participant, just feel free to put your question and tag me in the participants chat. Um, all right, so I think we're kind of wrapping up a little bit here. It's been about 36 minutes, and we've had 700 people tune in so far, so this is really, really good viewership. Um, so I'm going to open up the floor to anyone who would want to kind of get their last questions or thoughts in, and we can kind of go over it quickly. But while we're waiting for that, I think Heathen had something to say as well. And I think this was in response to what we were talking about earlier, where it's like the other problem with payments is last year during the crypto AI phase, people were building like slot bots and vaporware. And I agree. But also during the crypto AI wave last year, people were not really thinking about payments, right? They were thinking about entertainment bots. And a few people were trying to build payments, I guess, on Twitter. But again, it's pretty limiting what you can do on Twitter. And at the time, there weren't very robust wallet infrastructure like Crossman's. And I think we're a lot better equipped this run. So hopefully people build more interesting apps this time around. Okay. And so if anyone wants to say anything, just drop a comment either on YouTube or on Twitter. But if not, are there any last words you'd like to say to our viewers and also the participants?
Yeah. Shamelessly, check out Farameter if you're building with x402 or just agentic commerce in general. It will support any protocol that's out there, not just x402. And then I think like more tangibly for hackathon participants, the like word of advice I would share is enemy is the perfection of good, right? And so like build fast and just ship things. It's better to have something than it is to have nothing. And the point of the hackathon is not to build the next $100 million business. The point of the hackathon is to learn and start exploring problems that you run into or that other people run into, and trying to find solutions for that. And I'm almost certain that there will be some 10 or some $100 million idea that falls out of it. And we'd love to support everyone in their own journey, whether it takes them just through this hackathon or further on. So if you have any questions, I think, Joyce, your comments about reaching out in the x402 hackathon Telegram was great, but also don't be a stranger on Twitter or any other platform.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. And again, if you guys have any questions about either just Crossman or even just building on X402 in general, feel free to DM me. I try to check my DMs and my requests every day, and just catch me in the middle of my shit posting. But Thank you, Pontus, for coming on, and thank you everyone for tuning in. I think this has been one of, the most informational like streams so far. Like you dropped a lot of nuggets of wisdom, and also like that alpha, like a few minutes ago. So if you guys want to kind of just rewind after the stream ends and watch it again. And I will see you guys again next week, same time, with different guests, also talking about X402, but from a different aspect and different angle. All right, everyone. See ya. Have a good day.
Thanks, Joyce. Bye, everyone.
Bye.